Welcome, everybody. Bobby Umar here with Simeon Wong. It is now time for my daily Power of Connection channel and broadcast for LinkedIn Live, the live stream. Very happy to be here. We're here every day at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And as I promised, even though I'm doing daily posts from Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m., I'm now doing a weekly Wisdom Wednesday, where I interview some expert in their field to talk about their expertise. And last week we talked to Michelle Falcone, and today we're talking to Simeon Wong, who's going to share his expertise in CVs and resumes. You can say hello, Simeon.
Hey guys.
Simeon and I actually go way back. We did our MBA together. We were kind of like a year apart, but we
Eons
were.
ago.
Yeah, it was a
Long
while
time.
ago. That was in like the 2000, right?
2002?
Yeah. I started in 1999, 2001.
Yeah.
So it was overlap there. But we met there, and we made a connection. It was great. He's a very smart, talented guy, and we've connected over the
Thank you.
years. Yeah, it's been great. And then it's funny. He reached out to me as a networking thing, and then I was like, "Hey, you should come because you're doing this new thing. That's amazing." So
It is amazing, yeah.
so I was very
Definitely.
pleased about that. And so my first impression of Simeon was a very thoughtful, kind, considerate, intelligent guy, and that was always my first impression. I don't know what my first impression of you was. Probably like loud, bombastic.
Very, very, yeah. In fact, you were he was my frosh leader in my first year of my
Oh,
MBA
was
school.
I? Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Anyway, you were loud, just pretty much like you are now, but it's great. You're great, Bobby.
I call it enthusiastic. That's what I call it. Okay. Look. All right. So before we start, let us know down below where you're from, where you're coming in from, and if you have any particular questions about CVs, resumes, you can start putting them right below. You can also comment on what we're talking about, any sort of nuggets you feel. If you think people should be a part of this conversation to learn about CVs, resumes, tag them or share this on your post and let people know what's going on, because Simon's going to dive into some major value nuggets and bombs here that you're going to love. And
Wow,
already
that's a lot of pressure there.
look, there's
Sure.
Vinay there saying hello. There's
Hey.
Tommy.
How's it
there's
going?
there's Marsha. So people are coming in here, which
Wow,
is
it's
great.
great.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. You see you see the live stream here, right?
I
See,
do.
there's already 28 people watching,
Wow.
right? And people are commenting. So, why don't we start by, one of the big things I'll say about Simeon is that he actually left the corporate world. And if you look at the post, he left the corporate world after 16 years. So, and now doing this new thing with CV resumes. So why don't you take it away, man? And then I'll interject with questions or comments
Yeah.
on things.
Sure, I'd love to. Thanks, Bobby.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've been working in management consulting and industry for 16 years, and actually one of the personal passions for me has always been investing in people, and that's kind of where my forte has been. So for the past 10 years or so, from 2010, I've been doing career coaching, and sometimes informally, but sometimes sort of more professional speaking. So. After 16 years, I felt that the corporate world kind of really wasn't where I fit in, and I wanted to focus on strengths and areas that I really was interested in, which was developing people. So I quit the corporate world, left the big bad companies, I guess as they call it, and I started my own company called Elevate Strategy. So and the sole purpose of my company, my firm, is to help empower young professionals. Particularly those who are transitioning. Bobby, I know you work a lot with students and young professionals who are doing that as well. But also, more importantly, to kind of take a step back when you look at CVs and resumes and your persona, to think about who you are as a person behind the letters on the page. And so a lot of my focus now is on that.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So let's dive right into the resume thing. There's already a question. Maybe we want to start with that. I don't even know. There's a question here. Would like your perspective on how they need to be different for ATS. You know what ATS is? I don't know.
ATS.
Yeah, I
No.
don't know. So
What
Vinay,
is that?
maybe you can clarify for us what that means. We also have people from India, Barrie, Ontario,
Hey guys.
Texas, Virginia, France, Florida, Nigeria. This is crazy, right? I love it.
Nigeria, wow.
I know, it's
It's my
awesome.
long lost cousin.
That's great. All right. So, and also from Stockholm. That's good. So, why don't you start off with sharing some of your big nuggets for making your CV resumes work, and then if people have questions, let us know, and then
Sure.
I'll get to the Q&A afterwards.
Yeah, so one of the things that has really popped out to me over the past couple of years is that on the recruiting side, so as a senior person in the consulting firm, we often have a lot of people coming in, new hires, people with some industry experience, and they often come in and the first thing they present themselves is their persona on a piece of paper. So typically what I say is like, you've got your whole life that's summated in 700 words, and that's typically what a resume length is. And when I've looked at those resumes, often I've thought, who's that person behind those words and those numbers? And quite often, actually, there isn't even a whole lot of enough in the bullet points that are presented on the page for me to really understand who they are. And in this day and age where people are talking about AI and automation and robotic process automation and all that, you don't want to see bullet points that could be one day, outsourced to a computer, right? So the meaning behind a resume and a CV now, it just becomes all the more important. And people really need to understand you for who you are, because at the end of the day, we're interpersonal people. So when I started looking at CVs and resumes and reviewing them and kind of talking to candidates about them, I really began to sense that candidates typically don't really identify back to who they were 5 or 10 years ago. They don't take a step back and reflect on what they did. And as a result of that, they can't really be proud of it, right? Because you don't remember what you did and you didn't really think about it. You just kind of leave it and get stale over the years. So part of what I do is I look at the model from three things. I ask them, what is it that you love to do? What is it that you've always loved to do, maybe in throughout your life? Number two is, what are you good at, right? So they may not be one and the same. You might love to do something like, I love to kickbox, but I'm not really good at it. But that's two things. And the third thing is, what value do you add to society? So I'm a big believer in storylining. So when you tell a story from beginning to end, our whole life is a story, and there's an ending, there's a journey to that. And I also believe that most people think about legacy. They want to think about that, by the end of their life, they would have added some value, right, of some sort to the world, to their family, whatever it is. So, you think about that and you think, well, how do I pack that into 700 words in the past, 10 years of my life, but then also give the interviewer or, the employer some idea about what it is that you're good at and what it is that you want to do. So,
I'm smiling because you're talking exactly about what I talked about even last
yeah,
night
yeah,
at our
that's right.
LinkedIn local event on storytelling. I talked about personal branding, and personal branding
Yeah,
is about telling your story and creating that alignment and making sure you find things that you love that has meaning and creates impact. And
yeah,
everybody wants to have that story and legacy that makes sense for them. But
that's right.
but your story and legacy as a personal brand also is based on the stuff in the past. That's why it's important to understand that and how it relates to your entire journey. So I love what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I meet with my clients now, I say to them, here's what happens. Typically, 2 minutes into the meeting, they give me a sheet of paper and they say, here's a bunch of words on it, bullet points, edit it, make it look prettier, increase the font size. Should I put it on colored paper, right? And then I say, well, listen, let's take a step back here and let's think a little bit back about when you first started working. What was it that you really wanted to do? And tap into not so much the role itself that you wanted to do, but why. So if you wanted to be an accountant, well, why is that? Were you good with numbers, right? So the first thing is, are you good at something? Did you love numbers? Maybe you've always loved doing crossword puzzles and sort of acrostics, all that kind of stuff, Sudoku. And I think, let's go back to why it is that you did what you did. And then we can start moving it forward and saying, step by step, here are the roles that you took. Now, I know that the role that you took isn't always dictated by what you want to do. It's dictated by the market, whoever hires you. But I believe that subconsciously we do select different job descriptions to apply to because there's something about that attracts us. So
Sure.
I want to walk them through a journey about here's what you did. So if you think back, for example, very pragmatically, 10 years ago, the first role that I had, for example, at Deloitte Consulting, shout out to Deloitte, the reason why I joined them was because I loved case competitions and I loved solving problems, right?
That was
Remember
fun.
those?
I love doing those.
Yeah,
It was fun.
yeah, those are good old days.
Good old days.
Um,
We're reminiscing here, guys. So there's going to be some
This is two old-
nostalgia.
two old
Sorry.
men,
Sorry.
So anyway, so back at Deloitte Consulting, loved the case competitions, loved helping clients solve problems. But as I kind of fast forwarded and I thought about my life, there's certain aspects about management consulting that I love more than others. And I found out over the past 16 years, that actually what I love the most is the upfront piece of it, which is engaging people when you first meet clients, when you first meet your new team, and really helping to understand who they are, and so that I can speak in their line, not so much as an authority figure, but more just to kind of, exchange ideas. And so what I'm really good at is connecting with people, and that's really what I love to do, more so than kind of project execution and all that stuff, even though that was important. That's fed me quite well over the years, which is great. But finally, after 16 years, and I tell the story to the clients that I meet because I want them to understand that their life is not static, it's not linear, and the world wants to see it that way. They want to see your life sort of stacked up one on top of the other. But it's really frustrating for a recruiter at the end of the day when that actually doesn't work because I can't match one role to the next one, and within a role I can't match the bullet points because it doesn't make any sense. There's no cohesiveness there. So what I ask clients to think about is, what is their core character? What is it that they believe in, they're passionate about? but then also extend that to why is it that you did the things that you did, right? So when you put if you have 3 bullet points that you could put on under a job description, what 3 are those, and why do you put them there, right? So there's a lot of that kind of soul searching aspect of resume and CVs that I didn't receive, going through the ranks, and I'd really like to offer that. And obviously, on top of that, then there's technical things like anchor points in the resume where you've got to put the heaviest weightest thing that you've done up top first, and there's a left to right rule. There's like the so what and the so what rule and all that kind of stuff, which is all great. But that's a lot of stuff you can actually get online. So what I like to do is just kind of make it more personal. This building the resume and I always tell people that apart from your birth certificate, passport, marriage certificate, maybe like your first Valentine's Day card, your resume is actually very, very important. It's a very important piece of documenting you carry without. This is your life that's on a piece of paper, 2 pieces of paper. So.
Right. Okay. So we have a couple of questions as we go along. So let me get into a few Q&A. So ATS is an application tracking system. And so it's the system that, and some ATS is the most horrendous system in the world, says Anthony. Another person says, Vinay says application tracking system. John says application tracking system. So the question is, what do you think of those things? What large companies use to filter resumes applications electronically?
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, lots of thoughts. Yeah, the not resurgence, but I guess the increase in the use of buzzwords, right? It's interesting because we've always had ATS systems. When back in the day when things were black and white, there are ways that companies filter out CVs, and the application tracking system world today is more sophisticated. But the problem is that it still picks up on buzzwords that really don't mean a whole lot in and of themselves. So what I say is this. For your resume to get noticed by a tracking system, obviously put in buzzwords that are important there, right? Obviously put in words that are on the job description, use the language that they're using, all this kind of stuff. When you look at a job description, if it says a lot of creation or a lot of innovation, a lot of leadership, make sure that you put examples of that in there and tag those words, obviously. But then I would say, because everyone else is doing that, the question then becomes, well, what really is more important then, right? Because at the end of the day, the ATS is going to narrow down people who really didn't know what they were doing anyway. Right? They were applying for the sake of it. They didn't really customize it. I'm going to assume that you've done your research, you've done your homework about the job, and you actually want to do it. So that's the first thing. If you want to do it, then you're going to put words in there that you want to do, right? So put that in there. ATS systems truly are there. As a recruiter, when I recruited for, especially for consulting firms, you have 500 resumes for 15 roles, right? So how do you get through all that? And usually it's the HR area that takes care of that first. But put in the buzzwords, but make sure that you put context behind that, because I found that ATS systems now these days, redundant ATS
systems, yeah,
ATS systems, they also track kind of the context of that word. So when you say leadership, for example, they'll track the before and after context of what that actually means, and they'll sort of say kind of between bullet points whether or not there's actual agreement between what you've done. So. Buzzwords, but put context behind it and actually mean it, because you're going to have to defend it one day if you have the interview.
More questions, all right? People are engaging. This is great.
Awesome, guys.
So let me just scroll back up here. So, oh my gosh, people have... So the ATS thing was something, and then the other question that came up was, let's see here. Love the Simeon. I love the summary. I love the summary. So now he says the same is true of LinkedIn summaries.
Yeah.
I love the summaries that tell a bit of a story about who you are, not what you are. Thoughts?
Yeah, who you are, not what you are. That's a critical component to even before you getting to the interview. So, when you read an email, right? Just a simple exchange of emails, you can usually tell by the tone or by the way things are worded, what kind of mood that person was when they wrote it. It says the same thing too. Is when you write a resume, whether it's a profile, at top of your LinkedIn, or whether part of your resume. You're from acting, Second City, right? I'm from a drama background, so this thing called method acting, and I truly believe in that, because it funnels who you are as a person, your own experiences, into that particular character. So what I mean by that now in the context of a resume, and you're writing a paragraph about yourself, is if you are a genuine person who loves to do X, it's going to come out in the way that you express yourself, in the way that you write, in the way that you talk. And so absolutely, who you are is so much more important than what you've done, because what you've done, there's that potential there to train, but who you are, do I really want to work with you? That's kind of what I want to know more.
Yeah, people are more willing to hire the person versus their results. I mean,
Yeah,
results are
yeah,
important, but if you have great results, you don't fit. Like no one wants to work with you.
yeah.
What's the point of that? Now we have some more. There's tons of questions here. Does certifications really matter on resume? On a resume, I mean, I personally I think they matter if your target is like certifications. But what do you think?
Yeah, certifications for sure. If you're in a profession that still requires certifications, then yeah, absolutely they matter, right? So CPAs, I don't think CAs are still recognized, but it used to be that if you had an MBA, for example, it was rare to have, and you might have MBA because you need for a managerial position. I'm not so sure that that's needed now. I mean, it's still very important if you're looking at certain roles, and maybe even if you've been to a certain school that specializes in that
Yeah.
area. So if you're a technology person, if you went to a specific like a Queen's MBA, whatever it is, McMaster, shout out Master, uh, that's important. But otherwise, I don't know. I don't see. I've
Yeah,
seen
I know, I know.
those.
So it depend. And you're right. The MBA is something I talk about where it's not as relevant anymore, depending on where you are, what kind of path.
Yeah.
MBAs are good for people who, after their MBA, want to stay in corporate for 10 years or
Right.
more.
Exactly.
If you're not, and you're gonna be an entrepreneur in like 2 years, then don't spend $100,000 on
No,
an
you don't need
MBA.
it. Yeah.
You have to think about those different things. And then the other thing is for me, like I'm a speaker, I'm also a coach. Do I need those certifications? If you have a wealth of experience, you don't need it, right? But if let's say you're young, starting out, and you're 27, and you want to become a coach, then maybe getting a certification as a coach
Yeah.
will help you. So it's something to keep in mind.
You're
Now-
just wise, Bobby. That's what you're
the
saying.
other
You're
question,
wise.
Simeon, is this a hard rule of limiting resumes to 700 words? It was just a
Ooh.
ballpark, wasn't it? What do you think?
That's a ballpark. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, just want to make sure.
The average technology one that I found. So
They're more. They're
there's a lot,
wordy.
very wordy, and,
Yeah.
and that's one of the challenges is if you cannot tell. So there's two things, right? Too short and too long. You have to have that happy medium that really you feel comfortable with that represents you. If you're a man of few words or a woman of few words, that's fine. That's no problem at all. But it has to be substantial. That's all. Not numbers, but substantial as far as content. That's important.
Okay, and then another person just said here, oh, Marcel says, I offer video interviews for my clients and tag their LinkedIn. Let me know if anyone needs my services. I love connecting with people. Maybe you want to partner with my company. There you go. You just put a tag in there, so maybe you guys can follow up if there's an interest there.
Sure. Let me know where you're at. Sure.
Other people are tagging people, which is great. I think that's awesome. Again, we're doing the interview, this Wisdom Wednesdays interview. Wednesday Wisdom, right? So interviewing people. Today I'm interviewing Simeon Wong, who's a CV resume expert, and I'll be doing this every week. And if you know people that want to be interviewed, that are leaders in their space or thought leaders or influencers, tag them below and connect me because I'd love to add them to my calendar. I've already added 2 more people to the calendar. I'm very excited to build a calendar every Wednesday for people to make it great. And again, I'm here every Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. You can comment below on your thoughts on CV resumes, your thoughts on our topic. If you have any particular questions, we're going to keep going because there's lots of great questions here, which I think is awesome. Another question, is it required to have a one-pager CV?
In some countries, that's preferred. In Canada, it's going to be 2 pagers. Yeah. If it's a one-pager, it better be a précis. So in other words, you better be very specific around,
Yeah.
I've got 2 or 3 bullet points about what I've done. I'm really good at that. And I've got 2 or 3 points about my education, and they're like, top-notch, right? So you've got to be very concise about that. But in usual cases, you're going to need 2 pages. I would hope that.
And another question was related, basically. My placement officer said that being a fresher, that we should limit it to just 2 pages. Is that true? I mean, I once got a 5-page resume. 5 pages.
Wait, you submitted one or you got
No,
one?
someone gave it to
Oh,
me.
all
No,
right.
I wouldn't submit it, but they gave it to me, and I was like, wow, 5 pages. My take has always been like the first half of the resume has to be good enough to make me want to read the rest of the page,
Right.
and then the full page has to be good enough to make me want to read the second page if there is one. And that to me like a very important structure for resumes.
For sure. Yeah, I would add one more thing too, Bobby, is if your resume is great and took both pages, that's awesome. One of the differentiators for me when I was recruiting and when I got recruited, and I got a quick story about this, is at the very end, when people talk about personal achievements or hobbies and stuff like that, make use of that opportunity to talk about what you love doing, like some quirky things about you that no one else would know. Now the world knows if you put in your resume, but don't put love piano playing, love traveling, love reading. But the most interesting ones are the ones who really step out of the comfort zone and say, you know what, I'm the world's most, expert coffee connoisseur because I taste coffee everywhere in the world. I'll tell you what mine was. One of my personal things was I was an extra in a Jackie Chan movie.
No
Did you
way.
know that?
Which one?
Twin Dragons.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's got Jackie Chan. He's got piano hands. So anyway, that's my piano hands. And so I'm in there. I put it in my resume. It's my first job at Deloitte. And the first week I'm there, or the night before the final interviews, we're having dinner. For that night and for the 3 weeks that I was hired after, I was not ever called by my first name. It was always like, "Hey, you're that Jackie Chan guy, aren't you?" And I started wondering, did I get hired because of that? That I'm a Jackie Chan guy? But anyway, my point is that do anything you can to get attention for yourself. When you've got substance, then you got to add that personality behind. That's the good section.
And you know what? The hooks are great. I have a hook story as well. So when I was doing my MBA, actually, I did a co-op.
Yeah.
And I got hired for a co-op. And on the bottom of the second page of my resume, it said that I did social dancing, jazz, tango, merengue, right, and rock and roll jive. And the project manager said, when I saw that, I was like, let's bring this guy in.
That's
He
right.
seems awesome.
That's
I was
right.
like, whoa, the hook at the very bottom of the second page, right? Just this thing of my
You
interest.
would never expect.
Never would have known, which is awesome.
Yes.
More questions here. Professional versus personal branding is part of a resume. Maybe we already talked about that, but I mean, my take on this is your personal brand is professional and personal. So it's not really just a professional
continuous.
brand. It's continuous, and that's also why your personal life and story is part of LinkedIn, is part of your resume. But is there any sort of differentiation there? You think?
No, I would agree with you, Bobby. I think what you've been doing over the years, I've been tracking, has been great, and it's really kind of inspired me to think of this way as well, because ultimately you're one person, right? So whether you're a person at home or at work, one of the best advices I ever got from someone was, when you're doing an interview or when you do whatever it is, talk to that person as if they're your friend, right? Like when you see me on the street, it should be no real difference between that and kind of what you see here. Even though, of course, you got to put on some sort of, you're a professional, right? So you've got certain things that you need to live up to. But
I was just
you're
thinking.
not?
No, I was just laughing because I was thinking, like, when I meet you on the street, do I say, "Hello, Simeon. How are you? Hope your day is going well. I work for a large consulting company." Like that's not how we
right.
talk.
That's right. Exactly. No, so personal and professional, it's there's one thing that I do ask, though, is that some people are very comfortable sharing personal experiences as part of their professional interview resumes.
Yeah.
That's going to be up to you. Some people are more transparent than others, but neither way doesn't mean that you're less sincere, right? I mean, sincerity and character and all these basic things about being a human being are important.
That's interesting. I mean, I definitely put personal stories into my interviews. On a resume, yeah, I've never thought about doing that. Like I could say, I mean, maybe. I mean, could you say something like I overcame this major catastrophe or major hurdle? I mean, climbing Mount Everest. I mean, that's pretty impressive. But that's more of a personal achievement.
Well, I'll tell you
But you
what
could do it.
Yeah.
I lost 150 pounds or something. Like, why not?
I actually.
That's interesting.
I had 2 weeks ago. I had a client who and during these sessions at resume, they get pretty personal, right? Because I need to know kind of your background in order to help you construct your. And this person kind of said, you know what, between you and I had a mental breakdown during that half a year, and that explains the gap. And I said to him, there's nothing to be ashamed of at all about that. In fact, build that into your story. Your job in front of the recruiter is to let them know that everything I've done in my life has built me up to be at this point. I'm here now meeting with you with all the scars and all the successes, so that I'm here right now to be successful at this job, right? So that includes things like, you've had a difficult time. And we played around with the idea whether or not to put something in there to say, the 6 month gap was explained by something. So I don't know what he ended up doing with that, but you should consider that. It's nothing to be ashamed of, to build it into your storyline, because that's part of who you are.
I agree. Although the other challenge, though, is many employers do care about that kind of stuff.
That's true.
So I mean, how do you get around that? You have to make the decision whether you want to do that or not. I mean, how do you make that decision for any sort of gap, whatever it may be?
Yeah. I think the problem with resumes and that first filter is that you don't really have a chance to explain that, right? And so there's two things that I've seen. Number one is overreaching, right? So if you haven't done anything for 4 years, you've done it for 2 years and a half, but you have a gap there of 6 months. Like some people say, 2016 to 2019, but really kind of stopped in 2017. So that'll come out in your interview, by the way. So, be careful not to do that. But, employers care. I know I certainly care when I ask, but I care more about the substance around everything else around that. And because I know myself that I've got my failures, I know I've had months at a time where I've done really poor job at things. So I'm a human being as well. So as much as things are, AI, ATS will filter it out. At the end of the day, when your resume gets in front of a recruiter, they care about the context of everything else. So, if you don't put anything in there, that's fine. But if you pick good put a good, well thought out content in the rest of your CV resume, you're fine. You're good to go.
And again, if the employer rejects you for that gap year
Yeah,
and talk about it, like, do you really want to work with these
you don't want to
people?
work
You
with them
don't.
anyway. Yeah,
A
for
couple
sure.
more questions here. Where are you guys located? Toronto, Canada. Want to connect on LinkedIn? Of course, connect with us. Same with anyone else. Yeah, guys, on the feed,
Yeah,
connect with people. We now have 100 people on this interview. Like
it's
they're
great.
talking to.
It's a
So
great party. You guys
by
are
all means, talk to
up
people
early
and
this
things like
morning.
that. Quick question: doesn't certification give you legitimacy? A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
depends what it is, but yeah. Another question: what about online resumes and websites? Do you think everyone should have one? Well, your online resume is LinkedIn, so I think everyone should have one.
yeah.
And a website, I think for the most part, most people should have one. So, what are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
yeah. If you have a website, especially if you want to promote things that are constantly changing, the website is a great vehicle. Obviously, you guys know because you can keep updating stuff almost like in nauseum every single day, every single second. So it depends what profession you're in. If you're one that's relatively stable, static, 5, 10 years at a time,
Yeah.
you may not need one. But if it's one that's like media or if it's marketing and you want to update your portfolio, I mean, your website is your portfolio now,
Sure.
right? So
Exactly. And people are saying nice things. Simeon's a real leader and expert. Good for you.
wow,
If someone wants to
thanks.
connect with us, by all means do that. Agree with the resume structure. What's your take on video resumes? How to do it well? Oh, video resumes.
Video resumes. I don't know. I've heard different things from different people, Bobby, and I've seen some pretty good ones from you too when you talk about that. I would say again, treat the camera as your friend. The person on the other side is a person who's looking at you, sure, but there's a lens between you and them. So ultimately, you're talking to a lens and to the person. So treat the camera as your friend and talk about it as talk about yourself as in first person. It's so much more important to do that when you're video than you are live because live they can see you. So don't start referring to and then yeah I sort of thought this and that's why I did this. It's more like I was really passionate about this and here's why I got to where I am and here's why you see what you see in front of you. Refer to the page in front of that recruiter, right? So if you're on the same page as page 2, say as you can see on the second page, if you look at that second bullet there, that's really I demonstrated leadership in that particular capacity, and that's just try to relate to that person behind the lens, and you'll do fine.
And I'll add, because I run I'm part of a video storytelling
Yeah.
group called Master Video with String Million. And one of the things that we talk about is just, always get feedback. So if you're going to do a video resume, get a lot of feedback because not everyone is as compelling as they think they are. And so it's important to get that feedback. If if you're naturally good at it and be like, I'm very good on camera, so I like doing it. Great, then do a
Yeah,
video resume, and they might be very impressed. But if you're not, and it doesn't, you may not know how good or bad it is. Get someone to give you feedback because you may want to either train on that.
Yeah.
I mean, video certainly is far more compelling because they see your personality, tone, and all that kind of stuff. But before the interview, which is great, which is either going to clearly get you in their good side or like, oh my God, no, like so.
No.
It's important to keep that in mind. Another question. Can you talk about how we can present our content such as experience, education, skills, interests, and so on? I ask this because we only get 6 seconds to impress a reader.
Can you read that again? That was a very nice. That's a really well-worded question.
Sorry.
By the way.
Can you talk about how we can present our content such as experience, education, skills, interests, and so on? I ask this because we only get 6 seconds to impress the reader.
Yes, that's right. 6 seconds is
6 seconds. Wow. Okay.
So it depends on the trade you're in, right? So if you're in, let's say, corporate business, which I'm familiar with, the most important thing to them is going to be your work experience, right? So you want to put that up front. Now, the question has been asked many times before about this career objective. We just talked about it before we went online, but do you put a career objective on top so it kind of captivates the reader? I do. I have a very short one though, and I think it's got to be very well thought out. The way that I see it is that the way you capture someone in 6 seconds is kind of like, what is it about yourself that you would want them to know if you first met them, right? So in person. So as a personality, if you are, if you're someone who's more task oriented, then make sure that that's reflected in your first page or in your top header, right? Analytical, leadership, kind of, take charge. These kinds of things are all like words that might pertain to your trade, and you want to make sure that that's obvious and upfront. It might be part of your career objective. But whatever it is that you decide to put on your first page, and that's what you get for the first 6 seconds. It's think about basic things like you learned in school, right? So power words, right? Using things like advanced or engaged or spearheaded or led. These are still very, very important. These are words that capture people's minds about who you are as a person. But also think about quantifying things. So people want to know numbers, right? They want to know outcomes. So they don't want to just know what you did. They want to know so what. right? And so what can come in all shape, form, shapes, and sizes. It could be, I expanded my budget by 10%, right? It could be increased the number of FTE counts by 50 people. Numbers speak volumes. So the more, relevant numbers there are to substantiate who you are, it'll captivate my mind a lot more than someone who just has words. So
And I'll tell you also, for me, that there's three things that impress me on a resume. Number one is numbers, right? So you have, I
yeah,
won a scholarship, I increased results by 6%, 20%, whatever. That numbers really make a difference.
yeah,
The second thing will be a brand. So, for example, if you worked at a burger joint or you worked at McDonald's being a brand is more impressive to me than working at a burger joint, Joe's Burger Joint. And then number three,
maybe.
leadership. So using those words you talked about, some of the titles that you had, like those types of things, the type of roles you've had. That definitely makes a big difference.
Yep.
Okay, we're going longer than a normal 25 minutes. We're because people are engaged with over 100 people on the
It's
thing
great,
here. So let's
guys.
keep going. Can you please help me write a free resume for me? I'm going to answer that one. No, because people ask me to speak for free. I speak for a living, and that's how I make my living. Simeon is
The other-
also someone who does CV's resumes for a living, so you need to
right.
pay him. He has tons of experience. We can certainly have a call to chat about it, right? But at the end of the day, like if you want the value that we're providing, you have to,
That's right. That's right.
put the investment in.
And I think that's where people miss out on things like what we're doing is that there's so much intrinsic value to what we've always assumed that everyone can do, right?
Yeah.
So when I say I write CV resumes, I say, oh, okay, I remember that was the 2 pages I did in fourth year undergrad when I applied for my summer at. But the problem is this: the fact that you asked me that question, I think proves my point.
Right.
Is that how can anyone else write your resume, right? No one can do that except for yourself. And so what I'm here to do, what Bobby's here to do, is to help facilitate that organization, right? So a lot of times we're so stuck in our own minds that you need someone to kind of help pull out all those elements of greatness that maybe came from like a summer camp volunteer. You were just there for 6 months, but there's so much leadership behind that
Yeah.
people don't realize. And so no, I don't want to write your resume for you. Number one, because I make a living out of this, but number two, because I'd be the wrong person to do it. It's you that needs to write it. I'll help you do that. So
Great answer, man. I love it. What about women who had to take a break and are now looking to get back to work? What tips do you have?
well, I'm not a woman, obviously, but
neither.
my wife is.
Oh, my wife is too.
And well, my wife is slightly different. She's a teacher, so she has a little bit of different of a track there. You know, this is an area that I probably wouldn't feel very comfortable in being an authority on. What I do know is that when I've interviewed people who have been on leave and they've said, well, they've been on mat leave, and so this kind of puts them back 1 or 2 years in the skill set. To me, that's not really what matters. I mean, a good recruiter is someone who will look at your entire work history and say, you know what, this person's got progressive skills, and before they went on leave, they were at X, and now they're coming back now for Y. And they may not have exactly the same skill set that I need to match, but when you tell a cohesive story and that person from end to end has got a lot of talent, to me that's never been right. I have interviewed and recruited as many people on mat leave or pat leave for that matter as not. So I think it's again, this just goes back to, this is a holistic picture, right? Your CV, your resume, your brand should not just be about one isolated part of your time, but it's your entire life, and so you want to reflect that.
Yeah, and again, I wouldn't worry so much about like just a mat leave. It's more the extended leave. Like let's say you took like 7 to 10 years off. Usually, moms will be involved in other stuff too that they can talk about in terms of their leadership, organizational, and management skills. So you can kind of talk about those things as well. And I also think that that's where a cover letter or a summary in your LinkedIn profile really drives home. This is what I've done. Here's where I am. Here's where I want to go now. So those are things you can add to it.
Right.
Someone asked, how can I make a good selling CV? We already talked about that, so just read the entire feed and you'll learn more about that. AI in the recruitment process. Are we ready for it? Will it change the process dramatically? Thoughts on that?
Yeah. AI in the recruitment process. Now, I just came out of a couple of firms, you'll see my LinkedIn profile, but that strongly focus on AI for everything. I can tell you that artificial intelligence is only going to get us so far. So when you talk about the recruitment process, I can't see AI being any more sophisticated than ATS 2.0. Okay, what it'll do for us, what I've seen it done in my own firms, is that enables recruiters to be able to capture the buzzwords and context around what they've done, and then sort of the buzzword in the context of their entire kind of resume. Mm-hmm. But what it can't do is it can't replace uh, whether you're genuine, whether you've got tone in your particular resume that kind of builds upon one another. So it's really great to see that when you have like progressive roles, but also the fact that you get excited, right, when you start writing about things that you've accomplished. And AI can't really detect that, but human beings can. So if I read an email from my wife, for example, probably the way that a computer would interpret it is say, well, the number of times she says love is 0, so she doesn't love you. But I would say it's like, we've got history together, and so I can see that this is how she's expressed love to me. So I wouldn't worry so much about AI and all that, all the wonderful technology that's there around that. I would just stick to the basics, right? Who are you? What have you done? What do you love to do? How do you want to add value to society? And put that down on a piece of paper, and that's really where you're at. I mean, you can't beat a mega machine even if you try to. So, and it's not going to do anything in the long run. I don't believe.
And again, Simeon Wong is a great CV resume expert. What's the website called? Elevate.
It's elevate.strategy. My website is elevate.strategy, and the dot is a DOT. So elevatedotstrategy.com.
Right, and we're going longer for this Wisdom Wednesday interview because things are going well and people are really engaged.
Great,
Lots
guys.
of questions. Does being in the position for a really long time these days is seen in a negative light, or is there a way to show it in a positive way? And I'm going to say that you can show the progression of your jobs and how you've done more and more different things. But if you were the assistant manager for like 13 years, there's going to be a question like, okay, why have you not progressed? Why have you not moved? So that's something to keep in mind. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. I used to work at HMV when they still existed. I was a retail rep there, and I really thought that I could make a career out of in retail, and there's nothing wrong with that. I loved that. I had a lot of friends that did that. The most important thing when you write on your resume about any given job, whether you've been there for 10 years or 5 years or 2 years, is the fact that you have progressed, right? Is the fact that you've done things that have added to responsibility. So let me give you an example. Even within one bullet point of what you've done, you could say something like, I was seconded, I was asked to do X, but I used my creative background in order to do Y. And as a result, there was an X% increase in productivity, whatever that is. So even in one line of a description that you've done, you can show progress, you can show innovation, you can show value add. So if you've been in your role for 10 years, 15 years, I mean, there's no knock against that, except Bobby's right. You have to kind of think about what is your ambition. And it really gets to that now. When a recruiter looks at your CV, your resume, when they see that you've done this for like 15 years and there's no progressive kind of responsibilities that you're putting in there, it's just 15 years. I mean, there's an ambition issue that calls into question, right? Even though you may be ambitious, you just got to make sure you're reading it from like building a pyramid. You got the base, you got that experience, and you're building out into more refined skills, and now you're really, really good at something.
So, someone's asking about sending a sample CV. Do you have one, maybe like a note on your profile that shows some sample CVs that you've worked on or your own?
Yeah, I can certainly do that. I've stayed away from templating, which is what people have asked for, because number one, because you can Google there's 1,015 templates I've seen now, which I all like. But the point is that I don't want you to get boxed into a template, and that's my point. Every person's different. Everyone likes a different kind of coffee, tea, paintings. Why would you do the same template as everyone else, right? It doesn't make any sense. There's one that I use, and I've been personally very successful. I worked at 11 multi-billion-dollar companies in 16 years. So I've got lots of interviews, but it works for me. So I could send you a note with something, but I don't think it'd be very helpful apart from talking through it.
The one thing that would be good to do on LinkedIn is LinkedIn has this thing where you can create notes, these actually documents to share with your network. And they're really, it's like a status update, but you share like a document. So it might be cool to create something like that for yourself. There's just LinkedIn.
That's great to learn.
Yeah. Someone else said, thanks for taking the time. We can do a season 1, episode 2 on this. So we could actually do this again since there's so much.
Tell us what you want to do in episode 2.
Interest, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Comment below. Let us know what we should cover in diving deeper into the stuff. Now here we go. Why is it that many employers focus so much on experience? I have noticed this even when applying for academic scholarships. How can a freshman figure his way out of this?
Right. And here's where you get creative about what you've actually done, and not to make up anything. You talk about experience versus, experience on paper versus experience in life, right? So there's a lot of people that we've met, you've met, I've met in life, Bobby's met in life, that are young in age, but very mature in the way that they think, right? And if you ask them to show you a sample writing, you'd never be able to tell they're 16, 17-year-old old. They're so mature in the way they're thinking that, it's far beyond my years. And that's the same thing with resumes. It's not so much how many years of experience often that you have, it's that what have you done with those years? Now, unless you're talking about applying for a CEO position or a board position, which of course you're going to need, 20 years. Um, I've worked when I started off career coaching. I worked with students, and students had summer jobs, and it was like working at Sobeys as a grocer for the summer, or working at a summer camp. And the interesting thing I found was once we started talking about specific things that they did, responsibilities they were given, why were they given these responsibilities, Ben? Well, it's because actually I'm really good at timekeeping. I'm really good at keeping something on time. Well, you know what? That's like a small nugget into project management. So maybe you can reposition what you did at that particular store, and how is that a project? How is getting all the things on the shelf and on the shelf back inside and everything aligned? How is that a project? How did you make that better? And I think that's more important oftentimes than the number of years you've done something. So if you're a freshman coming out of a college, university, whatever it is, I would really reflect on the experience that you have had so far, either in a summer job, internship, or maybe in some cases even like a school project, right? Where you've taken leadership. It's been a tough. You don't necessarily have to say that it's a role in a specific brand company, but that was your responsibility. You did these things, and here are your skills. So find a way to be creative about what you've done and summarize it in a way that it means something to people that they can understand.
Okay, this has been really, really great. We're now 40 minutes in, and thank you, Simeon, for this. Yeah, it's been great, and I think I'm gonna probably end at this point. If people want to, someone talked about cover letter writing. Some people want to, say there's some great comments here you can also look at afterwards. As first off, I just want to, I'll give Simeon a chance to maybe say some final thoughts, but I do want to thank Simeon for coming here. But also, we're doing these LinkedIn live sessions every morning, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'd love to have you join us tomorrow and Friday and next week as well. And every Wednesday we'll have I'm going to try to do a weekly interview for Wisdom Wednesdays. And if you think people will benefit from this talk, from the stuff we're doing, tag them below, share us on your profile. Let's get people part of the conversation. I'd love to kind of grow this channel and get more people involved. I do appreciate the people that are joining us. Any kind of last thoughts on CVs and resumes, Simeon?
I would just say, a plug for myself. Just my
yes,
website
plug,
is
please, yes.
So my website is www.elevate.strategy.com. So people get confused about this. They're like, what is it? So elevate is elevate, and then dot, D-O-T, and strategy, all one word, elevate.strategy.com. And that's where you'll see my website and all the things that I do. My LinkedIn profile, please feel free to check it out. But lastly, I just want to thank you, Bobby. You've been such a huge contributor to the professional world in the past 20 years since I've known you. This guy's
Thanks,
awesome.
man.
You got to keep supporting him because we need more people like him in the work world. So thanks so much.
I appreciate that. I mean, you were very thoughtful and articulate, like just as I imagined. It was great. So, thanks so much. And if you missed you can watch the entire replay on LinkedIn, so it's totally fine. And we'll see you guys tomorrow for the next one, and then next week our weekly interview. I'm still looking for someone actually for next week. So if you have some suggestions for thought leaders, plug them below and tag them below, and we'll get them going. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good week.
Take care.